One of the nice things about making content is that this is a nice creative outlet for me to push for these changes and not hold as much of it in. And I think that's what people are doing with these actions and protests, and on top of the push for these changes that will save people's lives and will stop unnecessary death and help people across our state and across the world. And it's an outlet for that because these are very heavy things and the world is hard right now for a lot of people. It gives a place for community, it gives a place for pushing for that future we want to have. And what leader to reflect on for those changes and the long push towards justice than Martin Luther King. One of the greats from pretty much straight through and after his college and after and in his 20s, alongside others, helped lead what at the time was very unpopular civics rights movement. He had a lot to say and a lot of values and a lot of ideas. And to this day, some of those are used by people who are against those values. We can pause the music a little bit because we're getting into what is a very serious topic. These pushes for change don't happen immediately, and they're not popular in the moment. And you would think now, with that historical context, that things that aren't popular in the moment, but are grounded in values and human rights, are in the long term have a legacy of support. And I think we're in one of those movements right now. And so, especially right now, what can we draw on from Martin Luther King to give us hope, to ground us in what needs to happen? And so I can pull up a few posts, but just off the top of my head, Martin Luther King was against militarism, imperialism, capitalism. He wanted, so I think he was a vocal socialist, at the very least, pushed for socialist programs that, regardless of who you were, was there to support you in a more just society, which then ultimately makes the collective more safe, more secure, and more equitable. Now, some quotes get used more than others, and people don't like to think that he was, that he would be against these selling of bombs to, in the attacking of innocents. But I think he would, and I'm happy it's a day in the beginning of the year so we can have this reflection, and it's so poignant right now. So let me take a moment to get some posts together that also help share the sentiment. Give me a moment. My live stream. Okay. Instagrammy. We're gonna get Instagrammy on here. We're gonna Instagritty. And I have a saved. And so if you don't know, I also have a series called Peace Talks where I talk about peace. It has been primarily focused right now on the Israel-Palestine conflict. I have episode 3 in the works. And I do want it to grow to be a wider push for peace. There isn't just that conflict happening right now. And we recently saw that U.S. is now bombing ships who stand with Palestine. Not that we've really had a good record. It's like we got pulled into World War II. We did a good job helping with World War II. But before that and since that, our record at the world stage when it comes to military conflict and espionage and killing is not great. I don't love it. I have a huge disconnect of it as a citizen, that our taxpayer money is going there. So much of our taxpayer money is going. But rather than run away, rather than shut myself off from it, I am going to choose to use my voice to make change happen, which is probably one of the most patriotic things you can do. It just can be really hard in the moment. I work hard to have some life balance and have outlets so that I can sleep well. Part of that's because I'm so informed. Part of that is because I am super empathetic. And it is hard for me to see some of these things. I mean, but I'm also not averting my gaze, which some people tend to do, and some people try to greenwash, whitewash, USA wash, and point a finger to the negatives that other people are doing without looking in the mirror of how we're impacting the world. And on the flip side, what the world could look like if we took a stronger stance for peace and building infrastructure and diplomacy over being the country in the world that's spending magnitudes more on weapons than others. And at a certain point, some of these politicians who have been in the game for decades, you just have to consider that if they don't want to realize and confront that, they are projecting their fear of, if we de-escalate, that other countries will attack or take advantage of that. I think that is 100% a projection. Maybe not 100%. It is at least 72% a projection. And we're really not having, I think, debates on this. I mean, some people are, but some people are fine letting propagandists and liars again and again go on television, and it's not good. I'll circle back to, I have some MLK posts I want to share. Okay, first post from United We Dream. And this is from Martin Luther King Day, which was on Monday, which was the 15th, if I'm doing quick math. So 18th Thursday, 17th Wednesday, 16th Tuesday, 15th. Yeah, 15th. Today we honor and celebrate the icon, the legend, Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King was an organizer, an activist, and a leader that envisioned a world without militarization, and where taking care of each other is a priority. And we know this world is possible as we have seen communities nationwide welcome immigrants with love. So, besties, let us honor MLK's legacy by fighting for a free Palestine, the end of borders, and resources for asylum seekers and all immigrants. And the quote is, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death." And even if some of these ideas, like the end of borders, and helping to support all immigrants, which these are just human rights things, and if we push for a more secure, more abundant world, these things wouldn't be as big of an issue, and we did less destabilizing. But spiritual death, right now we're in this fight where there's people who pushing for this versus the greedy, those who honestly don't know how they do some of their mental spiritual gymnastics. It's like, even like Jesus, who grew up and was like Palestinian. Like Palestinian is that like region between like where like Africa becomes like Europe and the Middle East. That's kind of where that word comes from. If you look back like thousands of years to some of the first writings, sure there was some like Christian and Jewish groups and kingdoms throughout time. It's more like city-states, but religions now like to be like, hey, we had those city-states, which were technically next to other city-states of different religions. But we're going to say we have claim over this land. We're in this fight for the future, for spiritual health, for fairness, for equity. And I do believe in the quote that the curve moves towards justice, even if it does not go as fast as we want, which is a really bad butchering of what the actual MLK quote is. The curve towards justice is okay. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I think we're seeing that. Like, we've seen that in peace movements. We've seen that over and over again. And only because I think the internet, are we at a point where some of these things that have been removed from us here in America and around the world that we're able to see and connect and empathize. So we're in this unique time where the internet has led to a lot of division and still does in some places, but gives us the insight to move the arc towards justice. And we just happen to be within the thralls of that. And I guess just a push to be resilient and keep up momentum, because you never know how choices impact others and then have that cascading effect. But things can be heavy sometimes, man. Man, woman, person. All right. Next one. This is a post from Sunrise Movement. Let me read it. Many know MLK for being a peaceful, nonviolent leader. What they do not know is his damning criticism of prioritizing profits over social services in the wealthiest nation in the world. Preach. He would be appalled at the state of the USA today. Overhauling our society will require mass movements who are willing to radically reimagine the world and fight to make that vision a reality. It will require each of us to make the lifelong commitment to organizing in the face of injustice and to show hope in the face of despair. The evils of capitalism are as real as the evils of militarism and racism. The problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power. Make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a better person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. He got like the best quotes, man. Okay. And then this next post is a speech at the Colorado State Legislature. We will refresh it so we can start from the beginning. And I will make sure that my audio is doing well. Okay.
Wanted to ground. I'm a teacher, so let me teach you some things about Dr. King. A lot of people forget that Dr. King graduated high school when he was 15 years old, graduates from Morehouse College when he's 19 years old, gets his doctorate from Boston University when he's 26 years old, the same age that I am today. And I ground us in that because young people fighting for social change have been a part of our country's fabric for a long time. It is right after he gets his doctorate in Boston that he goes down to Birmingham in December and begins organizing against an institution that is implementing segregation. Martin Luther King's politics, oftentimes while they are lauded today, are important to ground in what they actually showed up as. Martin Luther King Jr. believed, yes, in the right to vote, but he believed in voting power first to get to the eventual place of economic power for all people. What I am saying and what I think is important to address directly is Martin Luther King Jr. believed in socialism. This is not a radical idea. Martin Luther King's direct quote says that it is not that we don't have socialism in this country. It is that we have socialism for folks who are rich and wealthy, who have fully funded communities and schools. But folks in my neighborhood in the north and west side of Denver, in Aurora and Greeley and Pueblo are still suffering from what Dr. King calls the rugged individualism of the poor. But I wanted to ground, I'm a teacher.
And I think he goes on. This I think is shorter because of shorts. Let me see if I can find the original one the first time I saw it, which no longer Twitter with X. Do I just type in x.com? Can I just X? It does go. That was the first time I did that instead of Twitter. Save posts. And it's interesting that the person who shared the longer version, because this one's shorter, that has no personal information, right? Yeah, okay. He is criticizing it, but let's watch it one more time.
Gets his doctorate from Boston University when he's 26 years old. The times while they are lauded today are important to ground in what they actually showed up as. Martin Luther King Jr. believed, yes, in the right to vote, but he believed in voting power first to get to the eventual place of economic power for all people. What I am saying and what I think is important to address directly is Martin Luther King Jr. believed in socialism. This is not a radical idea. Martin Luther King's direct quote says that it is not that we don't have socialism in this country. It is that we have socialism for folks who are rich and wealthy, who have fully funded communities and schools. But folks in my neighborhood in the north and west side of Denver, in Aurora and Greeley and Pueblo are still suffering from what Dr. King calls the rugged individualism of the poor.
And we saw this a bit with COVID, where trillions of dollars went to businesses and organizations. I mean, we see this in a number of different places. Socialism for the wealthy, and I think this is something that Bernie in 2020 started using as part of his messaging. And I'm surprised hasn't caught on more, is that we have socialism for the rich and wealthy, but not for the everyday person.
I, like many up here, like many of us here today, stand in solidarity with the philosophies of Dr. King because I here fight for the poor. I fight for the oppressed. I fight for the downtrodden. I fight for the dejected. Our job in here, now that we already have the voting power of people that everybody is guaranteed a vote, is to enact the second part of Martin Luther King's philosophies, which is to create the conditions of economic power, to shed the shackles of an unjust past that has enacted oppression. And that is important to remember, that is often not a popular struggle. That is not something that many people will be willing to stand with us as we navigate it. And it is important to remember that that was the same thing for Dr. King. We celebrate him today, but the day that Martin Luther King died, he didn't have no federal holiday. Martin Luther King's approval rating was below 50% on the day that he died. Our struggle for justice might not be popular, but it is just. One of the reasons why Martin Luther King's philosophies were so unpopular is because he called for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Vietnam. I'm so proud to stand today as a member of the Latino caucus. I'm so proud of my caucus for standing in solidarity with the oppressed and calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza today. Thank you.
Yeah. And we don't have to look at the the comments there.
Representative Hernandez.
Let's go here.
Good morning to the...
And we're back to here. And then on this screen, I now have this post by a group post by family members, I think. It says, as we observe the New Year and the 95th birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., it is our heartfelt prayer that 2024 will see a restoration of sanity and humanity in American policy, where plans for peace replace attacks for war, ushering in a new day of brotherhood and sisterhood where equity, justice, and peace are a reality for all, encapsulating the great unity of which we are all included because each of us are the dreams of the dreamer. Love is, love wins. And that's an official family member post. I have another one. Okay. Nope. Okay. It's midnight in the Middle East. And this one was, actually, this was months ago. But still relevant to the conversation. Family members. What are their takes on things? It's midnight in the Middle East and in the world as Palestinians endure death and devastation, now including a near total cellular and internet blackout resulting from Israel's strikes, and as people weep for loved ones in Israel who are taken hostage or killed by Hamas. As I mourn the unconscionable disregard for humanity and appeal for the release of all hostages, I once again passionately urge a ceasefire and immediate deployment to Gaza of additional crucial life-saving supplies at the scale needed. We cannot wait. And let's see. This is one 4 days ago. On his 91st birthday, I wanted to share some color photos of Daddy. It wasn't long ago. It wasn't that long ago. Taken too soon. And then there's an official page. Let me just make sure this is the right one. Official ML King 3. Okay, this is the son. Global human rights activist, co-founder. And then the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Which is, and then this was the birthday post, and there was at a game they did the coin flip, so that's why there's like football posts. But this is, I think, where we are right now, and another chapter, unfortunately, of U.S. and world history where we are seeing what people and groups are willing to push through discomfort for peace and human rights, and who is on the fence and not taking a stance. And it's both inspiring to see who is saying things, and at least within some of my social circles, there's just wide amount of support. But also on the opposite side, frustrating those who are not saying or doing anything. I mean, if you're not on record at this point, it's been October, November, December, and we're 19 days into January, 4 months in, and maybe this is hard for people to understand. They don't have the historical context. They don't, which at this point is like, you're just not carving out the time, which I guess, I mean, it's a heavy topic, and I understand a lot of people disengage if they feel powerless or that their voice doesn't matter, but I want to say that your voice does matter, and there is a path through learning and community where we can make peace happen. MLK Day, Martin Luther King Day. This is front and center. And I think we'll only continue the push for peace to be front and center. I think the nonviolent organizing will only continue and escalate. And I just can't get over how much we are putting into bombs and death over healthcare. And I mean, even Israel has universal healthcare, and we help fund their healthcare, but we won't give it to ourselves. And I think it's because we just let money powers have way too much influence. Pretty obvious where to see on things. And so, I mean, one of the reasons I wear this sweater today, Invictus means unconquered, unbroken, unconquerable, or undefeated. Invictus was a poem by William Ernest Henley in 1875. It was a poem frequently recited by Nelson Mandela. And it's a good reminder to be true to my own voice and my own push. And I felt for this first episode, I might not be in a suit or look a certain way. And that's a whole nother ordeal of me pushing past people pleasing and believing there is a certain way to look that isn't just me wanting to express myself, but it's a reminder and grounding feeling in my push for solidarity, in my push to continue on. And I felt like wearing it today. And this thing is just stylish and keeps me warm. So, and it matched. So, you know, that's how we're doing today. All right, we're wrapping it up. Next Friday, see ya here